high in numbers. Is
what I noticed on mine, what's happening is like videos from a year or two ago that I was filming at this time of the year are now starting to pop up as frequently watched videos in the studio, and they're old, right? So you start, and that's your notification. I went live.
Yeah.
And,
I just got it.
and so what happens is, it's kind of unusual because people are looking at stuff that you've done a couple of years ago that may or may not have gone, as planned, or maybe, hopefully we're all getting better at making these video things and stuff like that. But, it's interesting. I'm getting a lot of like people watching the peppermint videos and they're commenting on that, or, I tried this, I did that. And, it's fun, but it's funny how those old videos just start creeping back into play after time, which honestly is why I started doing streams and stuff at all, was so I could track what I was doing a year ago or 2 years ago or 4 years ago, right? Just going back to be able to look at it.
Right.
So,
this time I try to label my videos to about what's going on that time of year, like whether it's, splitting or collecting honey or whatever, so that way,
who I like that does it, Mike Berry. When he does a video, he says, he does this, it's a how I do, not a how-to video, but he says today is March 20th or whatever date it is, right? So you actually know that if you're watching this at the end of the month and he put it out 2 weeks ago, you kind of have a time frame, right? When I first started watching YouTube beekeeping, I was watching YouTube beekeeping and trying to mimic, like Cayman and people like that were putting videos out, but unaware of when they were actually doing that in the time of the year, right? So like if Cayman was doing something, I already should have done it because I'm south of him, right?
Right.
So I was always constantly behind and doing things after the fact. Or you watch someone further south than you, and maybe it's right on time, but I don't have my stuff prepped to do that.
Right.
So it's kind of important when you're looking at those things and watching them that you have a time perspective of what time of the year they're doing them and when, and how that applies to where you're at, right? So that's just my 2 cents.
Even your demographic has differences within the same area. I mean, you could have the same foliage, you could have the same temperatures, but for some reason, some yards aren't progressing as fast as others. And
I mean, and it doesn't do it the same every year. Like I've got dogwoods blooming now, and I've got azaleas blooming, and I've got, my privet hasn't popped yet. So when that pops open, it should be game on for sure. So
somebody at my work wanting to make noise. Shut up.
It's so local. My friend Beekeeper, which is only a 15-20 minute drive for me, his trees bloom a week before mine do.
Yeah,
almost 2 weeks at times, because he's right actually on the hill of the river, and I'm 2 ridges over, and just that river affects it that much.
Oh yeah, it's amazing how things, like even Sam is like 5 minutes down the road, right? He's like probably 5 miles at best from me.
Yeah.
And his honey looks different than mine. He's just got different blooms and different stuff happening. So it's very interesting that how you can live so close to somebody and things be so different, right? And that's why I feel okay with, like, when I talk to James and those guys up there about how they do things. I'm trying to learn how I can apply that timing and stuff to my apiary. And it all starts with, well, when do you need your bees ready, right? Whenever your flow starts, that's when you want them to be at their maximum, but you don't want them to be too big ahead of time, and you don't want them to be too small ahead of time. So it's just working backwards from that time, but the time changes, right? So it could be a week or two either direction of when it was last year, or it could be like last year where everything bloomed and then we got a freeze and everything died, right? So it is challenging. That's what makes it, I think, interesting to most of us, that every time you go out there, it's like, oh crap, they threw me another curveball, or Mother Nature did this, or something. So I don't think there's really, and I said this to a guy that stopped by earlier. I was like, he's a little bit north of me, and he was asking, well, when does your flow start here? And I said, well, usually around beginning of April, but that can change a little bit, and that doesn't mean that yours is going to be at the same time. It might be a week or two. It might even be a little bit earlier than me, just depending on how the temperatures go and the rain and everything else. So,
and elevation. Yeah,
every year it's different, right? So we just do the best with what we got and what we can do, and something that you do there may not work exactly the way it does here. And what I find with me is like if it's a demarray or whatever I'm trying to do, unfortunately, being me, the way I do things is I tend to think about them while I'm doing them, right? So I'll do it, and then I'll be like, you know what? All of these cells in this demarray, that would be just a total waste to smash these, right? And then you start taking all those frames out and making splits with these beautiful cells, but not realizing that you're setting the colony that you're trying to grow, like you're decimating it, right? You're just wiping that colony out. And those are some of the hard things you learn after you screw it up once or twice, right? So
just a change of plans.
Yeah. I mean, so I had a buddy ask me about the demarray, right? And I explained it to him step by step what to do, and about the queen excluders and that whole thing. And he's like, oh yeah, I did that demarray you were talking about. And I said, well, if they've all hatched out, then go back and, you can take the queen excluder. Oh, I didn't use the queen excluder. Well, so you didn't do a demarray. You just added boxes on top of it, right? If the queen gets everywhere, then you really didn't even do the thing, right? But in his mind, he's doing the thing. So it's like, oh, okay, well, I appreciate I could help you out. That I didn't really help you out, right? But it's just one of those things. But I do the same thing, right? Everybody, I think we do, which is some of the things that really, I don't know, as far as like pet peeves and stuff, like and it really came with the Appy tablet thing for me. So people were so we got to have the studies, And in the back of my mind, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about myself, right? So how many times, and you don't have to answer this, but how many times do you buy something and you pull it out of the box and you just start putting it together? Even if it's like an IKEA table or TV stand or whatever, you just start putting it together. You don't look at that paper that tells you how to do it or anything. You just do it, right? And then if you have a problem, then you go to it. You might stop and look. Like, how many times were you riding with your old man in the car and you got lost somewhere, and it's like your mom's like, stop and ask for directions, and they're like, I'm not asking for no directions, that was my dad, right? I'm not pulling out any map to look. I know this place.
All right, and Bob, it's time for me to hop off because my wife's home and we're gonna go do something for dinner time.
All right, well, enjoy yourself.
Yep, be good.
You have a good time, man.
See you later. Yep. But that's kind of where I fall in line with like scientific studies. I like to read the information too, right? But at the end of the day, if you throw a 265-page scientific study in front of the people, 95% of the people aren't reading it, right?
They may skim through it later, but not.
But they just want to know that paper is there, right? That's it. Just, is there a paper? If there's a paper, somebody's looked at it. It's okay, right? You know, and that's the funny thing for me. So it's cool.
How many times do you go research something when you go to do something in your yard? You do it at the spur of the moment to see, if it's going to really work or has potential to work.
In how much stuff do you do in your yard that you find out works without reading or looking at anything? Right, that you've just done something in your bee yard and you're like, oh, that worked out pretty good, and you just did it. Like a few years ago, I was trying to expand my bee yard. Right, one hive made a bunch of cells, so I just started putting little metal cages over top of the cells, and as they would hatch out, I would put it in a box and let that queen out with some bees. Right, the virgin queen, let her out. And then move that whole frame to another box, and another one would hatch out, and I'd let that one out. And then I would pick that whole frame out again and move it to another box and let another queen out, and just did that. And I went from like 4 to 12 colonies just doing that with one frame with like 10 cells on it, right? And it worked. Now, have I done that again? No. Why? I don't know. I just haven't done it again, but it worked when I did it. So it was and nobody ever said, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't, will that work? I didn't see any papers on it or anything. I just did it. And it ended up being okay. So a lot of stuff, like when I watch videos and, if Ed, you show something and it works and I try it and it works, it's fine. I'm not pressing you for, where's all the documentation? Where'd you get this information? How did you figure that out? What year was that written? When did that website come out that was published on? And who was the guy in country it came from? Right? None of that's all afterthoughts. If I put a Appy tablet in my colony and I pull a tray and it's got hive beetle, or not hive beetle, sorry, if it's got varroa in it, I don't need anybody to write me a paper. I can see there's beetles in it, or there's varroa in there. I don't need a paper. I see that it did something, so I just go about my business.
Shoot, there's a lot of times I'll pull stuff right out my behind while I'm out there trying to figure out.
Right. Something's happening. I don't have time to go in and Google it and look it up on the internet and, read 5 articles on it and, find somebody that is credible and then do it. Yep. As long as you taste it first. You saw I tasted it. Well, at least kind of. I did that. That's what I did. But it's, I think it's all, everybody's going to have to experience their own stuff and learn it in their own time. And, if we can help with that and what we do on YouTube, great. If, but it's like anything. I can read 10 articles, and if I don't want to do any of them, I just won't do them. I don't necessarily post a bad comment on them, or, I'm not throwing shade at anybody. I just don't do it, Easy.
Or if you try it and it doesn't work,
Right.
Well, it didn't work in my yard. I don't know why it worked for them, but it didn't work here.
I don't disagree with what you did, like on your tearing off split. Sure beats. Do what you want to do, right? Am I going to do a tearing off split? Probably not. That's just me. So it doesn't have anything to do with your bees or what you did. It's just not what I'm planning to do.
Well, it's the only reason I did the tearing off is because of the numbers. I had so many in those boxes. I figured that'd be the best way to split up the vast majority of them.
And it was something new and different, right? So, I mean, that's something to try. I mean, for me, I would have probably done it differently. I would have probably I would have moved some brood up to the top box. I would have shook all the bees down. I would have put a queen excluder on there. I would have let the nurse bees and all come back up to the top. They would have covered the brood. And then I would have pulled those frames and put them in a separate box as a split. And that would have been it. And if there was one with a cell on it, that would have went with them, right? And then it would have been that would have just been easier for me. That'd have been the way I did it. That doesn't mean what you did was wrong. Just means that's what I wouldn't have done it, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I mean, how do you think they came up with the old adage? You ask 10 beekeepers the same question, you get 20 answers, right? Because that's why. I mean, whatever you feel.
Everybody has several ways of doing it.
Right. And whatever you feel is the best way is the way you're going to do it. And that's what works for you. That's perfectly fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So like if with the Appy tablets, if nobody wants to use Appy tablets, that's perfectly fine. Just don't throw some BS reason out there on why, right? I mean, it's just don't do it if you don't want to do it. And that's the way it works. Absolutely.
So I have a the bees are pulling nectar from somewhere right now too. So I don't know.
Yeah, I've got a small nectar flow going right now, not a large one yet, but it's coming. It'll hit, and hopefully, I'm actually, even though my numbers aren't great, I mean, I've got 23 out there right now. That's not a huge, dramatic number of bees in my yard. However, there are 23 relatively strong colonies that should be able to pull a bunch of honey because they're strong, as long as they don't take off and hit the trees. Yeah, what's worse is to ask 10 entomologists and get 5 different answers. Yeah, that's true. That is true. I've seen that as well. So so it just, you know, there's basically, I find there's a few different I guess what I consider hardline groups, right, in beekeeping. The 2 major ones I see are treatment-free and treatment guys, right? And somewhere in between is where everybody wants to be, right? I think everybody, if you could have a center point, everybody would prefer not having to use anything to treat your bees, right? That would be the most beautiful thing. We don't have to spend money. The bees do good. They live. No mites. No problem. None of that, right? So that's the common ground everybody can agree on. The problem is there's that gray area where we do have varroa mites and we do have hive beetles and we do have wax moths, and you know, and the challenge to get around those, and everybody has different thoughts on how that works. And unfortunately, we don't usually agree to disagree, right? And that's okay. It's okay to agree to disagree on something. It doesn't make anybody less than anybody else or better for that matter. It's just a different way of looking at it. So, you know, when you got someone like, let's say, Bob Binney, that everybody highly respects in the beekeeping community, that says he's trying to go more natural, right? Not using chemicals. That's more along my way of thinking. I'm not a treatment-free guy. I just like more natural ways of treating. And so that's where I'm gravitating to. And does that give me a bias? Yeah, probably. But, you know, it is what it is.
Well, I had to come to the consensus there for a while, though, just recently, that, you know, you're still having the same percentage of losses between treaters and non-treaters. You know, that's what I keep seeing. It's like, you know, well, how many you have losses? Well, I had 15%. Well, I had 20%. There's not that big of a difference between the two.
No.
Or, you know.
Well, I guess if you're doing it on a larger scale, right? So that's a 5% difference. If you got 1,000 hives, that's 50 hives difference, right? So there's a little bit there as you get larger. If you're talking 10, you know, then you're not, maybe another hive or so, right? It's not that big a difference. But you know, as it gets larger, it definitely, the numbers do change. But you know, there's plenty of studies out there. I mean, they've been out there. I dropped one earlier, which was I don't know if it's still in my I don't know if this. Nope, that's not it. Sorry, I was gonna drop a link, but now I don't know where the link is on my thing here. Oh, here we go. Copy this. This is a efficacy of essential oils, and I don't know if it'll show up on yours or not, Ed. So I know it'll show up on mine because I just shared it. But I'm going to drop it in your private chat in case you want to drop it over there for you.
Yeah, I think the link showed up there. Let's see what we got over here.
But that's a paper from the National Health Institute, I believe. Let me go back to the top. National Library of Medicine. And the name of the paper, it was written in 2021. It says evaluating the efficacy of 30 different essential oils against Varroa destructor and honeybee workers. And it tells a bunch of different essential oils and what their effects are on on the Varroa mite. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, to where there's like 90 different papers that are cited as references, including some with Dr. Boncristiani, which everybody's heard of. With Robin Underwood is in there. Let me see. I had another one that was in there. Keith Delaplane was one of them that wrote a paper that was referenced. So there has been lots of studies with it, right? And that's one that I dropped. There's another one that I had, and I don't know what I did with it. But it's with Thymol and the FDA, right? I think it was FDA. Yep, federalregister.gov. It's an exemption from a tolerance level for thymol usage in the States. I'll drop that link as well. And I'll drop that link in your private chat in case you want to share it as well, Mr. Ed.
All right.
Yeah, I call you Mr. Ed, and then you got notoriety automatically.
No, you call me a J.A. on the side.
So those are two papers that I've recently read that have to do with essential oils and mites. And a lot of that was stimulated from people with questions about the Appy tablet and what's going on with the Appy tablet. So I started doing a little bit of my own research, and these are things that our government and notable scientists in the health community have said about essential oils. So I thought they were great articles. And if that's your kind of thing that you like to look into that stuff, then there's plenty of stuff out there that has essential oils in it. Nobody seems to have any issues with, Hive Alive, Honeybee Healthy. I think Pro Health has essential oils in it, right? There's a lot of stuff that uses it, and there's not been any issues with it. Oh, so this that last article was actually from the EPA, not excuse me, not the FDA, but the EPA. And it says this regulation establishes an exemption from the requirement of a tolerance for residues of thymol. And that just says that you can't put too much thymol in your colony, that it won't have any effect on the honey or the bees or people. So that was a very good article. And just a little bit of extra science in there. And, the thing with essential oils is they're derived from plants, right? Different plants and herbs and stuff like that. So that's a very more natural way to me. Not that I'm 100% like natural beekeeper. I want what's best for my bees, and if this helps and it's more natural and it, you know, should drop some mites, then that's a good way to do it, in my opinion. Now everybody has opinion, right? So just
I think we gotta drop as many chemicals as we can out of our personal lives, because we're inundated with it all the time.
yeah. Well, especially with the recent studies that they're doing, like Lewis Bartlett's doing about the residuals of chemicals in the wax after you've used them, right? How long that stuff stays in your wax and in your comb for the bees, and is that harmful over a long period of time? I don't know. I keep coming back to the thing that I overwintered more. I'll say a higher percentage of my bees on brand new fresh wax, brand new fresh comb, right? Now, we all know that drawn comb is gold, right? It's gold in your colony, but it's got to be comb with no poison in it, right? I mean,
really,
that when it comes down to it. So yeah, I am, you know, and I see Bruce just popped in here. Yeah, I am more of I think I lean more to the side of a more natural approach if possible. Not that I'm 100% let them do their own thing, because, you know, we took them out of an environment and put them in a box. So I feel like you got to kind of try to help them as much as you can, but I'm not trying to just inundate them with a bunch of chemicals. That's not my goal. And just want healthy bees that make it through, right? And that's what I'm doing. So
yeah, I mean, that's what I want too out of it. You know, is that have healthy bees, but you also don't know how much of that chemicals gets in the wax, gets into your honey as well.
You don't.
You don't know.
You take it out, and if you've ever used Apivar strips, you ever notice that they seem to hollow out the wax right behind where that strip is, right? And I don't know if that's just for them to have better travel room to avoid it or what, but if they don't like it that much, then you know, maybe they don't want it in their wax, I would assume, right? They're probably not out there looking for Amatraz to put in their wax or something else. It's definitely a fine line, and you know, at the end of the day, I think we all just want healthy bees that live, you know, and you know, there's always going to be colonies that die for whatever reason. Even in nature, they die, right? But I think we just want what's best, and whatever that is, we don't know, right? Nobody knows. One day, hopefully, they figure it out, or somebody with more knowledge and brain power than we have figures it out and gives us a leg to stand on. So until then, we just do the best we can.
Well, that's it. I mean, yeah, in a lot of ways, we could be the biggest hindrance to our bees' production by what we do.
Oh, I believe we are, as beekeepers. Unfortunately, I think, you know, the bees are going to be bees. I mean, if they're living in the box, they're going to do what they have to do. And, you know, swarming and stuff of that is part of their nature. They build up. That's their whole goal, right? To build that colony as strong as they can and then propagate their species. And we do everything we can to help them grow strong and stop them from propagating, right? We don't want them to swarm. So it's kind of like, okay, well, we're trying to get them to that point, but not let them, and just constantly do that. So it's a little bit of a conundrum, right? But, you know, it is what it is. I guess if you want to produce honey or bees or whatever your goal is with beekeeping, I think that's between you and your bees and your operation there. But I'm definitely trying to grow my bees stronger and healthier than I have in the past to you know, harvest more honey, I sell a pretty good amount of honey, and we're going to try to do that. So,
well, you know, that's the only way I'm gonna get growing here is try to make some money with the honey. I thought I'd have more bees wanting to split this year than before, but it's still early.
right.
I
It
still
is
might have
still
time.
early. For me, see, and that's been my issue in the past, I think, is that I've tried to oversplit. And by doing that, yes, I have a larger number of colonies, but I don't believe they're as quality of colonies, because they're always small and they're always behind the 8 ball trying to build up. So I'm trying to do more actually from the Book of Charlie there, right? So get a certain number of hives I want to keep and then take resources from those colonies to strengthen up any weaker colonies and just kind of perpetuate those to be really strong. And if I can take some splits or maybe catch some swarms or whatever, do it that way. And that way, if I lose something, hopefully, if I lose something, it's a smaller colony and not a larger colony. But you never know, man. At least I don't ever know. I would like to, I'm sure we'd all like to sit up here and say, oh yeah, I know I don't know everything. Matter of fact, the more I think I know, probably the less I actually know. Because every day when I stream like this and somebody else say something, I'll be like, you know what? That makes perfect sense. Right. That makes sense. And sometimes you got to stand back and sometimes I try to take myself out of that equation, not how would Bob do this, right? Well, what Bob's been doing might not be working, right? So if that's the case, I don't want to listen to what Bob has to say on this one. I want to listen to what, maybe what Brad said on this. Brad said this is what he's doing. So let me try that and see if I can take my own opinion out of that mix to see if that fixes the problem. And then maybe, hey, if it works, maybe Bob's hard-headed ass will come around to that way of thinking, right? And sometimes you just gotta do that.
Well, I find that there's sometimes it seems like too many options to come up with,
and we do it to ourselves.
Yeah.
How many times do you find yourself at YouTube saying, single brood chamber management, and then you get 50 videos, right? And every one of them says, this is how you do it. And some of them, like Charlie does single brood chamber management, but he definitely says that he does a modified version of that, right? And why he does that. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's just figuring out what you want to do. And Brad says the perfect thing when you ask him a question. Like when I've asked him a question, he says, well, okay, what are you trying to accomplish, right? Let me know what you're trying to get accomplished. And then it doesn't really become an issue of, well, should I do a demarray, or maybe there's a better way to do that I haven't thought of, or something like that, right? And then you just got to be open to listening to new things and not constantly just shooting things down all the time. And that's probably one of the reasons why some people like my YouTube and some people hate my YouTube, and most people, I don't know. It is what it is. So if I try something and I like it, I tell people about it. If I try something I don't like it, I tell people about it. It's just is what it is. It's not that I'm trying to be anything special or anything different than anybody else. It's just, this is Bob, right? That's what my whole channel's ever been. And that's how I look at it. So,
I mean, I think we all try to do what we can do. I'm pretty sure, and opinions are, everybody's got an opinion. I go through the rant of the whole statement, but everybody's got an opinion.
I've heard that statement before.
and sometimes the opinions come from people who are those too, but
right. I mean, and that's it. It's at the end of the day, if someone makes a comment or something, I read it. And yes, sometimes the comments on your chats and stuff like that, they sting some, you know. And sometimes it's like, I think like on videos and stuff like that, people make comments before they've watched the whole video, or they make a comment right when they see something on the screen, but they don't watch far enough to see what you actually did about that or what your thought process was, you know.
I've done that to you through your videos.
Oh, why do you do that? And then like 5 minutes later, oh, now I see why you done that or something, right? So yeah, I'm special. The short bus special, John.
Well, you know, my name is Ed, and I am sometimes a little special. So, you know.
Special Ed. But you know, when you can admit your faults, I think a lot of times that helps you find solutions, right? That you can admit, well, hey, maybe I was a little overzealous on this, or could have done it a little bit differently, or you know, just always looking to improve. I think is the goal for me. And do I succeed all the time? No, I don't. You know, probably fail more than I succeed in a lot of things, but I keep trying and I keep going after it, you know, and wrong or right, we're going to do our best. And, you know, Ian was in here earlier and he sent me a message. He says, I really appreciate your perspective on things, because I don't always take things at face value, right? I try to dissect them a little bit and come to my own conclusion on something. And I think that just helps me understand things better. And maybe sometimes I do good at explaining things or well at explaining them, and sometimes I don't. And sometimes I just say things like and Brad and I had this discussion. We'll do a live stream. I've already heard the story he's getting ready to tell. I know the story that he's getting ready to tell. I ask the questions so people in the chat can hear the story, right? So it's something about letting that story be heard by somebody else, even though I already know the outcome and the answer and what's going to happen. It's on these live streams. It's asking questions that I know the answer to, but it's not for my benefit, right? It's for the 100 people that are watching the stream, or maybe just the one person that hasn't heard it before. That's where the gold is there. And allowing, you know, when someone like Ian, who I regard his opinion very highly, because you don't become successful in this business by not knowing what you're doing. And the fact that I can hopefully stimulate a thought process in Ian's, whether he thinks it's bullshit or not, that's regardless. It's the fact that he stopped and he thought about what I was thinking about. And he's never told me it was bullshit. He's never validated my comments either, for that matter. Just that he appreciated my perspective. That's all I'll say, right? And how I look at things. So, and that to me is mission accomplished in what I was trying to do.
Well, I think what happens with a lot of these lives is that you may have a view on something or a thought you were going to go with, but then you have a couple people on there that are giving you a fresh perspective from different angles that you didn't even think about.
Right. That's it. And then sometimes, like, give you an example. Brad and I were sitting there and he was talking about pallets of sugar. This was off a stream. And he's got this new dust collector, right, that he's got in his shop that he's trying to get working. And I said, well, what if you just bought one of those big, the big bags that are full of sugar if you're going to feed your bees? And he said, yeah, but I wouldn't have a way to get it off of my trailer because my machine is not big enough to move it and get it in my tote to mix. I said, well, you could either shovel it, or you could take your dust collector hose and suck it up and blow it into the tote through your dust collector, right? And he's like, That's a great idea. Why didn't I ever think about that, right? Because it's just going to vacuum it up and spit it out the other end and whatever he points it in. Would it work? Don't know. Never tried it, but it could work. And so it's just something like that where I don't have any of that equipment. I don't have that issue. I don't have to buy that kind of sugar. But it was something that it was like just an outside view of saying, well, you might could try this and see if it worked. I mean, how long would it take you to figure out it didn't work? 30 seconds? Ain't working. And you turn it off, right? But yeah, so, I mean, it's just stuff like that I think makes these live streams go really well, is that, you know, you can sit there and talk with other people that have maybe similar problems. Maybe they don't, right? Like a lot of people, like Charlie has the mixing system in his thing. I don't have that. I've got a toad in the back of my F-250 full of liquid that I can't get off of there. So I gravity drain it into buckets, right, to feed them. And that's the way that was cheapest and easiest for me. So instead of going to buy a pump and a hose reel and all that stuff, it just was, you know, like I said, I'm not always thrifty on everything, but some things I'm thrifty on. And a piece of pipe and a fitting to screw into my tote to open it up and let it come out, cheap, right? $20. So that's some of the things that I save money on. I don't save money on boxes. I buy my boxes. You like to build your boxes. That's fine. Nothing's wrong with that, right? So it's just what you have time to do in your schedule and what you like to do. If that's what you like to do, nothing wrong with that. Just, you know, it's all about adapting what you want to do, how you want to do it, I think.
All right, guys, I'm gonna have to close up the stream tonight because I have some stuff I got to go take care of.
You said, hold on before you run. Did you see Ian? He says, yeah, I was welding and heard my name. What's up? No, I just said, I really appreciate when I get a message from you that says you appreciate the way I look at things. I said, now you've never validated that you agree or disagree with what I've said, just that you appreciated the way that I brought it up and thought about it. So that's what we were talking about. and whether you like it or dislike an opinion I have, the fact that it provoked thought for someone like you, Ian, was a thumbs up to me. So I appreciate that and appreciate your opinions. So, but anyway.
Well, so I'm gonna go ahead and say, be good, behave, and behave until next time. God bless you and your bees.
Thanks, guys.